Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode number 51. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. If you're looking for more information about the podcast, past guests, or want to catch up on previous episodes, or just want to drop me a line, it's all at the website, desertladydiaries.com. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries and on Twitter as Desert Lady Diary. Today, Teresa Sitz from Wonder Valley joins me. She and I will talk about her extensive community involvement stemming from a long interest in community organizing, how she started writing for the local High Desert Star, and why it seems to be a constant battle keeping our desert safe and protected. Today, my guest is Teresa Sitz. She lives in Wonder Valley with her husband Ken and son Elliott. She serves as delegate to the Municipal Advisory Council and as coordinator of the Wonder Valley Community Center. She's a columnist with the High Desert Star and co-publisher of the Wonder Valley Sandpaper Weekly. For more information, please reread. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dawn.
Thanks for coming. What was your very first experience with the desert?
I grew up in Boise, Idaho, and we were right on the edge of a desert, so I spent a lot of time in the desert as I grew up, and I forgot about it. I moved to San Francisco, which is so green and beautiful, and then to LA. And then after that, we took a trip to the Mojave Desert, and I just instantly felt like I was back home.
I think there's a lot of people that come here and have that feeling when they first arrive here, sight unseen for the very first time. There's just something about it that feels, and you had a previous experience with desert that brought that back to you, and I know that I've talked to a lot of people that have not even had an experience with the desert but have come here and suddenly felt comfortable, at ease.
It just clicks.
Exactly, yeah. It's like nobody can really put a word or an explanation to it. It just is, if it's in you to accept it, I guess, it's in you to accept it. Yeah. How long have you been out here in the desert?
About 4 years.
Okay, and coming from LA, right?
Right.
So was it like that whole come out for a weekend or a week and the trips got extended? How did that all pan out?
Well, we bought a cabin a little bit north of the Copper Mountain Mesa Community Center, and so we were weekenders for a year or two. And then I joined, then we bought a house in Wonder Valley, and I became a delegate for the Municipal Advisory Council for Wonder Valley. So then I had to be here for at least half of the time.
Oh.
So I was here a little bit more than 2 weeks a month, and then I just ended up moving out here. So I've been out here full-time about 2 years and love it.
How did you come to be the Wonder Valley representative for the MAC?
Well, when I was working at Copper Mountain Mesa with Mary Helen, who's also on the MAC, I guess I wanted to be just like her. So I asked her if there was another opening, and she said Wonder Valley, and I'm like, oh, I live in Wonder Valley.
That's awesome.
So
that's great.
I applied and I got it.
Well, and sometimes, I looked back on your background a little bit, and you have some long experience with community organizing.
Right.
And when you're a person who moves to a place and you want to know more about the community and you really care about the community, sometimes those are just the things that you do to get involved to try and make a difference.
Yeah.
So how has your experience been as a member? I feel like you're very active when I read the paper, things like that. So I think we'll segue into the Wonder Valley Community Center. It would just seem like a natural progression for you. But what are some of the things that you have worked on as a member of the MAC? And then we'll get into the community center as well.
Sure. Well, the latest thing that we all worked on really hard was WEMO. The West Mojave Plan, which was to open our roads here in the Morongo Basin to ORV traffic. So a lot of people from Wonder Valley were working on that. But this was the third round with the BLM. So I was working hard with Pat Flanagan and other people throughout the area to prevent that.
What do you think it is that has us continually, because that's not the only thing that it seems, and you and I being here both a very short time, even have now already seen that there's a number of things that start to happen out here that we have to, as a community, revisit to kind of put up our hands and say, stop, no.
Yeah, if you move out here and you love the desert, you're going to end up fighting for it. And I didn't know there would be such a big fight out here to preserve the desert.
Yeah. What do you think it is about out here that we have to keep doing that?
People see it as a wasteland. They see it as something nobody wants. I worked really hard to get the fire department and the papers to stop using the word abandoned in terms of cabins, because it has a real romantic sense about it. And it gives people the idea that they can come out here and that it's a free-for-all, and they can go onto private property and take or actually steal whatever they want. And nothing really out here is not owned. Every inch is owned by someone. And just because a cabin is in a state of disrepair doesn't mean it's not cherished by the people who own it. So now they say unoccupied or uninhabited.
Oh, okay. Well, that's better.
Yeah.
It's funny. It was probably a breakfast day out at the Palms. And one day there were no less than 2 people sitting at the bar, and I was overhearing conversation about, yeah, you can pretty much come out here and do whatever you want and make as much noise as you want. And I was thinking, no. You can't, and don't do that. People actually live here full time, and if you're just coming out here on a weekend, or you get the idea that you want to come out here and be full time and do that sort of thing, I don't know how long people like that would last out here.
Yeah, I hope not long. I mean, the Pew Research did a study, and they found that the quiet and the solitude here has a price tag on it. It has an economic, it brings jobs, and it brings tourists. It brings revenue to us that can never be replicated by ORVs or any of the other loud and pervasive things that people like to do.
That's interesting. I never heard that. Yeah. So I had my own battles in LA before I left with construction near my home, and went online looking for information on continual noise bashing of people and being wakened at 5 and 5:30 in the morning to the sound of construction, which is PS not allowed per the ordinances. So I had to do a lot of digging and was constantly calling noise enforcement team on a regular basis to get somebody out and manage that. But out here, that's a little difficult because we are unincorporated and we're depending on the sheriffs that there are few of.
Right.
So that makes it really difficult to keep our peace, if you will. And speaking of the Wonder Valley Fire Department, there's none.
No, they're gone. They're in 29 Palms.
Okay. How does that seem to be working now?
We actually have very few fires. Most of it's medical calls.
Oh, okay.
So they are a little farther away, but most of the calls are taken by Morongo Basin ambulance anyway.
Oh, okay.
So in the paper today, there was an article about kind of like an overlay tax for all of the unincorporated communities. And they're hoping in the fall, I think, to pass it. It would be like $157 for every parcel. And that would be a vast improvement over what they were going to ask us, which was about between $350 to $500 per parcel.
Oh my goodness. And is that to resurrect another Wonder Valley Fire Department? Or
I don't know that it would bring the fire department back to us, but it would pay our share of it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So right now we're only paying like $35. So it would dissolve our fire protection district and that tax, and then just bring in a new fire protection district with the new tax.
Okay. And speaking of fire protection and EMT, you are certified.
Yeah, I was trying to raise a paid call fire department so that we could replace county fire. And they said that we could do that, but we'd need 15 people. So I worked really, really, really hard, and I got 5 or 6 people to join. And one by one they dropped out, and I was the only one that finished the training.
Oh my gosh. But are you glad that you did the training?
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of things does that make you eligible to do if something happens in your community?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a licensed EMT, so right now with no fire department next door, I take my bag with me everywhere and to work, and so if something happens, I can help people. And we found a guy collapsed in front of the community center a week or so ago.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so we brought him in and took care of him until the ambulance came.
So it was worthwhile. And then there's always the threat of either an earthquake or something like that happening, so you would be there in the event that happened as a part of CERT, maybe?
No, actually, if I joined CERT, I could only work at the level of a first aid person.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't work at the level of an EMT.
Oh, so it's better for you not.
So I probably won't join CERT.
Right, okay. Yeah. Okay. Switching gears or segueing into the community center, for a while now it hasn't been programmed.
Right.
It has just kind of been there. And was it actually opened on a regular basis by anyone? How was that working before they posted the position and you stepped in?
Yeah, for the last 3 years, because of the MAC, I've had it open twice a month, one for a monthly MAC meeting and then once for like an informational thing. So we had Bert Lies out to talk about rattlesnakes, and I don't know, we had Joshua Tree National Park came out for citizen science, and we went hunting for fulgurites, and I brought you one.
Yes, you did. And someone actually I wanted to mention to you, I was at the poetry reading that Choya Needles does once a month at Space Cowboy, and there was a couple there that had come and gone out and done it, and she wrote a poem about that.
I want to hear it.
Yeah, I'll have to find out who that was that day. But I was like, oh, that was Teresa. She led the group out there.
Yeah, we'll do it again in the fall when it gets cooler.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And for people who don't know what fulgurites are, will you explain?
Sure. Okay. When lightning hits wet sand, it hits at about the temperature of the surface of the sun. Ooh. So it just melts the sun and the rocks and everything together. They're usually little pieces, but some of them are big, and they're just fun to find. They kind of look like coral.
That's cool. And you've recently found something else out there.
Yes.
I happened to read it in the paper. Can you talk a little bit about that? That was pretty exciting without giving too much away.
Sure. I love to just pour over the maps, and so I bring up Google Earth and just go in and then look. And I found one day the full Bloom Love Volcanic Gardens. And it's about 400 feet long and 150 feet wide. And it's on a property in Wonder Valley. And it kind of looks like the back of a Dr. Bronner's bottle. It's just all this text made out of pieces of volcanic rock.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it's all about God and the Bible and turn off TV and dance more and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, in the article, I think it said Ken and a couple of other people were kind of working on isolating certain sections so that they could actually zoom in and get a full transcript of what it might say.
Yeah. So Joe Barrett has drones. He's a videographer, and we're working with him to get that. But it was a woman who made it, we found out. Her name is Hazel I. Stiles.
Oh my goodness.
And so she lived there in the 80s, I guess, and made it all by herself.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you've been doing some other work with Pat Remington at the Old Schoolhouse Museum research room.
Right.
What kind of things are you guys... It looks like you're compiling maybe some history about Wonder Valley. I mean, the research that they have there and the information that they have about 29 Palms is amazing.
It is.
So how are you guys putting things together there with them?
Well, Ken started working on the bars of the area.
Oh.
Yeah, so we had the Rancho Santa Fe was an old bar in Wonder Valley, Stars Way Out, of course the Palms, and then there were a bunch of great bars in 29 Palms. And I'm going to work on a project. Like a lot of our streets in Wonder Valley are the names of veterans. So Stagg and Gare and Godwin, those were all veterans. So I'm going to take all the street names and try to figure out who the veterans were and at least write a little paragraph on each of them.
That's cool.
Yeah. We have a folder for Wonder Valley. It's pretty thin, so we keep adding to it when we find more information about anything. We went out to New Dale recently. It's the old ghost town over by the mines. So I'm doing work on that from 1902 on.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. So I guess we could put a call out to anybody who has been a long-time Wonder Valley resident or knows family that has lived there a long time that has any information to kind of reach out to you or to go to the research room and drop stuff off. I understand they get stuff in there all the time that people actually bring in, and it's climate controlled.
Yeah.
So that everything stays preserved, if you will.
Yeah, and you get to meet Pat Remington, which is always a treat.
Yeah, she's amazing. So glad to have had her on the podcast. I think she was episode 41, if anybody's listening and wants to go back and listen. She did a lot of great work on the adobe homes and repair and just the history of 29 Palms. And not being a native resident herself, she was one of those people like us who come to town and just fall in love with the place and dig in and get involved and want to learn more about what's happening. So speaking of writing, You do a weekly column for, do they actually call that, it's called The Weekender, right?
Yes.
So it's part of the High Desert Star, and it's all about Joshua Tree. How did you get started doing that column?
Well, just like the Mac thing, I was working with Annalise at Copper Mountain Mesa, and she was a columnist. So I wanted to be just like Annalise and write a column too. So she told me how to do it, and the person for Joshua Tree had just left. And so I applied, but they never responded to me, so I just started sending the columns in by deadline. I sent the first one in, nothing happened. The second one in, nothing happened. And then the third one, Ken's like, your column's in the paper. So I called him up and I go, does this mean I'm hired?
Right.
They were like, yeah.
That's amazing. That's a great story. And I think that is how I actually identified you when I first came to town and started going to the pancake breakfast for the first time. When I would come to town on weekends, there was a point where I was just kind of doing my recon and coming in and making sure I wasn't just imagining that I was, falling in love with this place. And then I signed my lease, and then I would come up on weekends for a month. And at some point, I ended up at the community center to the breakfast. And prior to that, I find that if you want to really know about a place before you move there, the local newspaper is the best place to get your information. So I would come in, like I say, on these weekender trips and pick up a newspaper and read it from cover to cover, everything from the sports in the high schools to the crime report to whatever. And then I'd pick up the Saturday paper and read all about Joshua Tree, and then I came to the pancake breakfast and walk in the door and I'm like, you look familiar to me. So that was really fun.
Yeah.
So, and you guys have kind of your own little weekly paper that you do and distribute out at the Palms called the Wonder Valley Sandpaper.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit and how you guys decided to do it and then what it all entails?
We love local newspapers, so we decided to write our own. It's just 2 pages, but we deliver it on Sundays at the Palms. And we're going to have our 4th anniversary this Sunday, so starting our 4th year. And it's fun. It's kind of patterned after Harry Oliver, who wrote the Desert Rat Scrapbook.
Oh, I never heard of that.
Oh, really? He was like a set designer or something in Hollywood, and he came out here and fell in love. And so it's this huge piece of paper. It's like a double tabloid, and it's made of really heavy cardstock, and he folds it in quarters. So it's called the only 5-page newspaper that you can open in the wind. And he put in a lot of what he called refreshing nonsense. So we kind of do the same thing. Another inspiration is the Scarfolk Council, which is this crazy place in England that got stuck in the 1970s. And so I steal from them quite liberally, as well as Harry Oliver.
I love the 70s. I should go there.
Yeah, I put it in my links.
Yes, and I'll put it in the show notes and on the blog page that I do for the podcast.
Yeah.
So recently, you've severed your ties with Los Angeles per se.
Yes.
As far as living arrangements and things like that. What was that process like for you? Because it was kind of Ken was going back for work.
Right, Ken had a job, and then last July he got laid off. So I told him, don't look for another job, just stop, just retire. So we sold our house and got the kid and came out here, and now we're just here all the time. I think there was a bigger transition for the two of them because they hadn't been here. I was really done with the city, so I didn't really miss very much.
Yeah, and how is it working out with all of you now here? In just a different environment and different friends, and Elliott's graduated, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's, Elliott loves the desert. He's 23 and he's getting his desert eyes, so he's really coming to appreciate it. But it's a little isolating for a young person, so I'd like to get him over to, at least to 29 Palms.
Right.
But Desert Hot Springs or Palm Springs would probably be better for him.
Gotcha. A little more activity and people and...
Yeah. But Ken's got a truck now, and he's driving around. He's got a little job doing property management, which he's enjoying. So we both keep really busy.
That's great.
Yeah.
You do find it's a very DIY sort of place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is kind of exciting. Some people might come out and think, oh my gosh, what do I do now?
Right.
But if you really start asking around and talking to people and getting out in the community, you can find things that people need done and make yourself a little business, actually, which is really, really nice. And even at the community center, there's probably not many people his age to interact with.
No, but I mean, he does like the people that come there.
Sure, and they probably have a lot of great stories to tell about the desert and things like that. And since we have rounded back to the community center, you've got a few things going on there now that people probably would want to know about.
Yeah, we have 2 new programs. We have Artist of the Month. Mm-hmm. So Chris Caraher recently showed and sold a piece, and Robert Rowell, he's part of Bill and Bob.
Right.
The duo, the music duo.
If you haven't seen them, they're a lot of fun, and they play often at the Joshua Tree Saloon or 29 Palms Inn. Yeah. Yeah,
we call him Harmonica Bob. So he's got 6 pictures up right now, and he sold one of them, which is great. And then we also have ASL classes, American Sign Language classes, on Saturdays from 11 to 12. And Lindsay started those.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Lindsay from Wonder Domes. Lindsay Anderson.
Yeah. She was on the podcast early on as well.
Yeah. So there's a person that we all really care for in the community, Stephen Wilhelm, and he's deaf. And so we're learning so that we can speak with him better.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen him and gotten a few hugs from him at the breakfast we
he's
call
a great guy.
Church.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to tell you, too, that the Wonder Valley Community Church used to meet at the Palms.
Did they really?
Yeah, before they got their building. So it actually was a church for a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. If someone were to say to you, you know what, Teresa, I came out to the desert and I think I really like it, I want to move. What kind of advice or what kind of things would you tell them to be aware of, or what kind of things would they need to know before they just pick up their life and move here?
Well, it can be hard here, especially if you come to Wonder Valley. It can be really hard. I mean, it's really, really hot in the summer, and I don't notice it very much anymore, but people tell me it gets really cold in the winter.
Oh, right.
And we do have hot and cold running water. Hot in the summer, cold in the winter. Mm-hmm. But we also have bugs and snakes and flying scary bugs, tarantula hawks, and you are isolated, but depending on what kind of person you were in your previous life, you'll probably carry that over into your new life. So if you were social in your old life, you'll find a society out here, and you won't believe that you ever thought you might be lonely. If you were busy before, you'll be busy.
Right.
Yeah.
Which stands to reason. You find places where you will get involved and get things done. Mm-hmm. Yeah. For the community and for yourself, really.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that really attracted me to coming out here was I found that these are people that love the place they live and are willing to do whatever it takes and whatever time it takes to defend that and keep it the way it is. Whether it's the WeMo, whether it's what did we recently go through? The DRECP, that business, whether it's the
solar fields.
Right, solar fields, big company that wants to drop a big box store in the middle of somewhere that doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people see that. I mean, I've had conversations, well, if you want to call them conversations, on Facebook with people about that. I was reading about a new development or something that they wanted to create a city down off of the 10 in this wilderness area of the desert, and some people accused me of being, you've all of a sudden become an environmentalist because they want to come where you are. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's that it doesn't make any sense to ruin a pristine area that there's less and less of to bring in the infrastructure that it takes to run that kind of operation. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to kind of have a thick skin and help people understand why it's important that we don't just try and supply water to, 50,000 people in a place where they didn't exist before in the desert.
Yeah, there's Cadiz too, or Cadiz, and shipping our water off to San Diego for their lawns is crazy. Right, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, there are people here that live here that need water. I understand you need water, figure it out where you are.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not trying to be a jerk, but there's only so much you can squeeze out of stuff before it just is a shriveled up dead piece of nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess the one thing I wanted to say about Wonder Valley is, for most of the people that I meet there, they really want to live there. And so the people that are there, they have that one thing in common. And when you're in a new area, it's rare that you have one thing in common with everybody in that area. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of the basis of all the new friendships, but it makes it really easy to meet people and form a friendship.
That's great.
I know. The people are the best thing about it. I really love the people in Wonder Valley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I get my little taste when I can.
Yes. and the people who visit.
Right. We try. Well, yeah. I did a house sitting gig recently up on Copper Mountain Mesa. And I think if a couple of things would have been different, like if there was Wi-Fi and stuff like that, it probably would have been different. But I found, because I'm so involved, like especially with the theater, and coming down 11 miles each way every night for like rehearsal and stuff, that was the hardest part. Being up there by myself with nobody, that wasn't an issue.
Right.
But it was getting to the places where I do socialize that was a problem for me. But I'm glad I discovered it instead of going up there, finding a place to fall in love with and plunking down some money and then realizing, oh my gosh, now I have to drive 11 miles to the theater or another 17 miles to get groceries or whatever the case may be. It was a great opportunity for me to find that out. So I encourage anybody who is thinking of coming to the desert as a permanent life choice to definitely scope it out and see what suits you best. It doesn't mean that you're not to be here,
right? But
you can find pockets of things that suit you and still give you that desert experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There have been times when I've run out of food at the house.
Oh gosh.
And
was the Palms at least open that night?
No, but it was like, do I make a 30-mile round trip to town to get food, or do I make a meal out of soda crackers and dried cherries?
Oh.
And the crackers always won.
Yeah.
Because it's nice just to stay home here.
It is. I have to say that when I sometimes get dug in, I'm just as happy not to get in the car and go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is nice. Self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today, sitting at the kitchen table, talking about a place that we really like.
Right.
So thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast. I want you to know how much I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you heard something that inspired or enlightened you, I'd love to hear about it. Send an email to desertladydiaries@gmail.com or start a discussion with other listeners at the Desert Lady Diaries Facebook page. Next week, photographer Sandra Gooden will be here talking about where her photography takes her and the healing power of the desert. And if you like this podcast and don't want to miss an episode, sign up for the weekly newsletter. Just go to the website, desertladydiaries.com, and click on Newsletter. Thanks so much for listening.